Right, back for part 2 on monsters. Again, we're going to be exploring the idea that monster as a metaphor is a useful way to capture the existential phenomenon of psychological resistance. So when we experience psychological resistance, we might frame this on a phenomenological or a psychological level as the most real thing we can experience. Again, carrying on from the previous video, when we experience resistance, a psychological resistance, it tends to emerge in relationship to a desire, kind of like a binary antagonism. So if you desire to go to university, you might have a type of resistance that, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, the professors are smarter than me. Or while I'm creating this video, for example, I might have the desire to create a really good video, but I might have the resistance of, oh, nobody's going to watch it, or the comments are going to be very critical or negative. And this resistance might prevent me from even making a video or putting out a video. So the question becomes, how do we confront this negativity? How do we move through and integrate this negativity and move beyond it in a way that we no longer experience these monsters, these figures of resistance, which would thwart our ability to actualize our highest desires? This brings us to the possibility that we have to develop an ethics of a relationship with this real, which means once you've ascertained that the resistance is really a psychical resistance inside your head, that there's not really an external reason to believe that you can't actualize your desire, something economic, something political, something social, then you can confront this darkness or this negativity within yourself, which is an ethics of approaching, how do I actualize or become the truest version of myself? So, this might be considered approaching the emotional level of your other side. The part of you that you have repressed, or the part of you that you know is there but you don't listen to it, or the part of you that you know is calling to you, but you don't have the energy or the motivation to embody it. In short, when one develops an ethical relationship to the real, one is willing to look this darkness, this negativity in the face, and to speak truth to it, and by moving through it, become more powerful. Now, this means that integrating negativity as an ethical act, is a pathway to a new type of experience of self. Instead of constantly projecting the lack out into an external reality like a economic, a political, or a social problem, which would prevent your desire, you realize that this paradoxical structure of desire and resistance is within oneself, almost like the opposite side of a Mobius strip or some other type of impossible object. And this might be an interesting way to think, actually, about the nature of the self. And when we have managed to embody, or in those moments where we do actually embody in a state where you're in a flow and there's no tension or antagonism, then one may have even transcended this structure of desire and resistance, where you no longer desire some future object and there is no longer some image of resistance which would prevent you from achieving this object, but one is purely flowing, one is purely moving in the real of this desire, which we might call the motion of the drive. Now, the motion of the drive brings us to interesting potential ways to explain the metaphors of heaven and hell as experiential concepts. Because when we're in a structure of desire and resistance, and we're stuck there, and perpetuating this state, it may be said to be a state of hell, where you are constantly depressed about something that happened in the past, or you might be constantly anxious about something that's going to happen in the future. But this might even be seen as something like the fall into into temporality. But when one has achieved the state of the drive, there is no longer a future which one is hoping to get to. There is no longer a past which one would hope to return to. There is merely the present moment of one's own drive, one's own becoming. And in this state, you might experience very high levels of creativity. You might experience very high levels of enjoyment. And the metaphor of heaven may be applicable here. So, I hope that was a good introduction to the idea of monsters as a form of psychological resistance. And if you couple these two videos together, will give you a sense of maybe how to approach the darkness within yourself, and by moving through that, hopefully experience the lightness.